I am the 90% shareholder, manager, and sole authorized signatory of my company. I regularly transfer money between the company and my personal accounts. Despite full ownership, bank raise frequent compliance concerns. What is a legal way for me to continue doing these bank transactions so that I keep bank's compliance teams happy as well? Okay, so this is a loaded question and there are many layers to it. I guess in simple terms, when you, as an owner of a company, so you are the owner of the company, you could be, in this case, it's 90%, you could be 100%, you could be 50-50. So you're wearing multiple hats. So you're wearing hat as a shareholder, you're wearing hat as a manager, and perhaps if you have any other roles, such in this case as also an authorized signatory. So you have multiple hats, and each one of these is a separate role. Legal is a separate role. Therefore, logically, legally, practically, commercially, there should be a specific basis for compensation and certain responsibilities and obligations that come with each one of those roles. And perhaps the lines are often blurred in the UAE because until recently we didn't really have tax in the country. And so therefore, when you don't have tax, you're not accountable to any other higher authority in terms of how you run your business. So if you own your business and you want to spend all that money that you make for your own personal needs and preferences and interests, there's no one else is going to ask you for any sort of statements or accountability or compliance because it used to be of no relevance. And therefore, that kind of historically, this culture developed in the UAE where there wasn't much of delineation between shareholder or owner of a company, a manager of a company, employee of the company. And so the payments were basically kind of managed commingled and were not really separated for each position. Now, that's how things used to be. Now, once the taxes were introduced, first it was VAT, now it's a corporate tax. Now there are requirements of compliance. And when you talk about compliance, usually that means that there are certain obligations that have to be performed by the company to various authorities. It could be a FTA, it could be the banks, and it could be the sort of economic authorities that license the company and the auditors and so on and so forth. So therefore, you need to make sure that now each one of the roles that you play is clearly described and delineated from the company as a whole. So you have, and perhaps the easiest way to explain this is that, let's say in the West, when being a shareholder of the company just basically means you've invested in the company, and as a shareholder, you're not expected to be involved in the company. You're not expected to be making decisions for the company. You're not expected to come into the office and perform your services in the company. So the shareholder, in perhaps more classical sense, means that you just invested into the company. So if you're one of those shareholders where actually you work for the company, that's a different employment relationship. So now, or the different legal relationship. So now you have the ownership relationship, and now you also have a relationship as an employee of the company. So therefore, if you, in this particular case, if you're transferring money to yourself on a regular basis because you are working for the company and performing services, then you should have an employment relationship, and you should clearly set a specific salary. And then that way your company can be transferring you a salary, and that way when the bank asks you questions, you can support that particular payment with a bank with a statement, with your salary certificate, with your employment agreement, and that way for the banks it makes sense why you're receiving a monthly payment, because shareholders don't receive monthly payments. Shareholders usually receive dividends. So this is why your bank is raising these sort of questions. So in short, it's possible to legally structure it so that it ticks all the boxes with the relevant authorities, including with your bank. But so you have to think about each one of these roles as a separate legal relationship, and therefore have documentation and structure your finances and your bookkeeping to make sure that there is a relevant compensation for each one of these roles.